salute to the flag.
Mr. Byrd. Here. Mrs. Swarner.
Here.
Mrs. Gray.
Here.
Dr. Duncan.
Here.
Mrs. McCune.
Here.
Mrs. Richmond.
Here.
Mrs. Shaw.
Here.
Mrs. Wooldridge.
Here.
Mr. Markarian. Here. Mr. Side. Here. Madam President. Here.
This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education of Berners Township. Notice of the time and place of this meeting was provided, and copies of that resolution were forwarded to the official newspapers as designated by the Board of Education of the Township Clerk. We very much welcome input from the public. There are 2 times during regular meetings that the public is invited to speak. One time is early in the meeting before the board votes, and you may speak about any item that is listed on the agenda. Towards the end of the meeting, there is another public forum to address any topic whatsoever. When you approach the microphone, please state your name and address. Please understand that our public forums are not structured as question and answer sessions, but rather they are opportunities to share your thoughts with the board. Any board responses to public comment will be addressed during board forum or committee reports. Also, I wanted to let you know that this board meeting is being recorded. So our next item is our student representative, Andrew Klein.
All right, so just to update, I guess, on recent events, I'm filling in for Kunal, who couldn't make it today. I'm not president of, the school, just the senior class. So, I mean, in the past month, the junior class just did a fundraiser for a talent show. I believe they called it We Just Got Talent. I believe the junior class is able to fundraise something around $1,500 or something around there. Meanwhile, senior class, we've been working on fundraising for pennies for patients, and we're working on our next fundraiser, which is Mr. Rage, which is April 21st, and we've been putting plans in motion for that to get that going, and that's, I believe, the proceeds from that go to Project Graduation, which is, I'm sure you guys are all aware, something to do with the seniors. Also this week, for the seniors, we have like a lunch thing for them to come in during the park testing, and then afterwards there's a presentation on, I think, drugs and alcohol, which the students are going to be at. And also in other recent events, I guess, regarding the situation with Martha, unrelated to student government, but many of the students kind of took the initiative to try and wear favorite colors, light blue and black, on Monday and Thursday last week, and a decent amount of kids wore them. But yeah, I guess that's all to update on what I know, in the past month.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next item are board presentations, and we're going to be going into the seats.
Good evening. I'm not going to wait for the technology. It'll follow me shortly. Yeah, it's showing up, right? So I want to welcome you tonight. We have a couple presentations, so hopefully this is the one that you've been anticipating. Not that the budget presentation isn't very important, but this is also an important presentation, and we're doing things a little bit differently this year. So in the past, when we presented the EVBRS information, the superintendent has done so. And he's done so primarily by presenting the data that we submit to the state, and then talking to you very generally about some of the programs that are administered in the district. We thought this year we'd do things a little bit differently and bring in some of our tremendous professionals who work with our ABS, our anti-bullying specialists, those are the administrators, but also the ABSs themselves, who are either our guidance counselors or our student assistance counselors. So we have all of them here tonight to actually spend a little bit of time talking to you. So this is an unprecedented presentation for us because typically the superintendent has presented this. So you get to hear from the professionals in the field who are working with the programs to help our students in this area. So we hope you find this a little bit more engaging, not that it hasn't been in the past, Mr. Markarian. So I'm going to start with some of the data that we submit, and then I'll turn it over to each of our ABSs along with their administrator. And so typically that's an assistant principal, although we do have some of our principals here tonight to support the anti-bullying specialists. Now, why am I presenting this year and not the superintendent? That's because I'm the anti-bullying coordinator for the district, and so I would be the person that oversees the program and works with the ABSs and the administration. So just a couple things about the EVBRS. The EVBRS is something that we must submit twice per year. We have 2 reporting periods, reporting period 1, reporting period 2. Reporting period 1 is from September 1st through December 31st. That is what we're talking about tonight. And then reporting period 2 is the longer reporting period. That's from January 1 through the end of the school year, June 30th. So this is a smaller window we're looking at. And so what we're doing is we're comparing apples to apples. So all of the data you're seeing are reporting period 1 data from prior years. And so as I present this to you, this is EVVRS, and it's also HIB information. The only thing we're not going to show you tonight is the code of conduct. The code of conduct statistics get submitted in reporting period 2, and perhaps you'll hear from me again, but this past year, Mr. Markarian did present that to the board in the fall. So that's typically presented in the fall, and reporting period 1 takes place in the spring. So you can see that all of the information that we're presenting tonight was submitted to the DOE, and this information is available on our webpage. We are required to post it, and it is posted for the last several years, actually. So the district incidents reported to the New Jersey Department of Education through this past December, you can see this past year, we had 12 incidents reported. And we'll break this down a little bit for you and talk about where the incidents were reported, what they were, and we'll go from there. So first, let's talk about those specific incidents and where they took place. When the ABSs or the administrator are entering this information into the state system, they must designate where the incident they're investigating took place and also what the nature of the incident was. So you're seeing here that last year we had, for instance, at Cedar Hill, an incident take place on the bus. At Mount Prospect, we had an incident take place on the building exterior. At Ridge, 3 incidents in the classroom, 2 other outside, and then 1 off-site but at a school-sponsored event. And then finally at Wham's, 1 in the corridor, 1 other inside school, 1 bus, and 1 building exterior. I promise you I will not read every single number on every chart, but I just thought I'd start with the first chart and go through it with you a little bit. Okay. So when we submit the information, it's submitted by category. So it's the Electronic Violence and Vandalism Reporting System. So there are several categories that get reported. The first category is violence. And so when we talk about violence in the school district, we're typically talking about fights. There are not many of those, thankfully. And you can see, for instance, last year at Ridge High School, we had 2 incidents of violence reported to the state. And the state defines violence as anything accelerated beyond a pushing match. That's actually the language the state uses. So I had to look that up today because I wanted to know how they define violence. And so a pushing match is not considered violence, but anything that escalates beyond that then gets categorized here. I'm sharing that today because the word violence tends to have a connotation of something extremely violent, and it could be simply something where the pushing accelerates to pushing someone into a locker or perhaps throwing a punch. That can happen, and obviously that would fall under the category of violence. Vandalism. So we had one incident of vandalism that took place in the school district. It was in Mount Prospect, and this was graffiti, actually. There was some graffiti on the outside of Mount Prospect that was cleaned up promptly. I can't get into the nature of the graffiti, but there was graffiti on Mount Prospect. Weapons. So again, this related to that graffiti incident. This was something that was used to put the graffiti on the exterior of the building, and so there was one incident there. Substance abuse, as you can see over the years, you'll notice that that typically takes place at Ridge High School, and we were down from the prior couple of years, actually. We had 3 confirmed incidents of substance abuse, and again, those are the numbers that were entered into the statewide system. Just to remember, this is only for the first 4 months of the school year. The other thing that gets reported, and I know that folks who are regulars at this meeting have heard us talk about this quite a bit, and that is HIB, harassment, intimidation, and bullying. And our ABSs and our administration can certainly, they probably know this verbatim, they can close their eyes and they can recite what's on this slide. This is really what guides us when we do all of our harassment, intimidation, and bullying investigations. The key here is that when we talk about what HIB is and what it isn't, is that we look at, is it motivated by a perceived characteristic? And you can see based on all of those characteristics there, or by another distinguishing characteristic. That's generally where we start when we look at the definition of HIB. And we continue to be very vigilant in the investigation of HIBs, and these are something the district takes extremely seriously, and we have very well-trained professionals, and it's really a testament to them and their training, and they really know how to go about conducting the HIB investigations. And so I mentioned those folks. They're sitting in the audience now. I figured it would be easier for you to see their names here. All of our elementary schools have one guidance counselor. That guidance counselor serves as the ABS in that building, the anti-bullying specialist. And you'll notice at William Annan, all of the guidance counselors, in addition to Dr. Bush, who I know is here, there she is. And also at the high school, we have our 2 SACs, and I see Mr. Gillikin there. And we also have Megan Hoffman, who is our other SAC at Ridge High School, who serves in that capacity. So in terms of HIB incidents, so these are incidents reported to the state as part of the EVVRS, but these are just HIB incidents. We had 1 at Cedar Hill, 1 at Ridge, and we had 4 at William Annan. And I'll get into the nature of these and the consequences of these, because these are also what gets reported to the state. So anything that I'm sharing with you tonight, besides the details, in terms of definitions, that's shared with the state. So here are some examples of HIB incidents that we have investigated. Most of these are this past year, but I did include one that is becoming very common, and that is the use of fictitious social media accounts. This is something certainly that is, I guess it's not even that new anymore because social media has been around quite a bit, but we've seen incidents of this over the years, particularly over the last 3 or 4 years, where either fake social media accounts are being created as a way to bully, or social media accounts are tampered with, and offensive messages may be sent out on behalf of that individual as a way to embarrass. And so that's certainly something that the administration and the ABSs deal with. Other HIB incidents that we deal with, inappropriate touching, the use of digital photographs, so doctoring or altering photographs. Again, that somewhat relates to social media. Another common statewide, this is actually very common statewide, HIB, and that's inappropriate language related to a child's race or religion. This is unfortunately very common statewide. We don't have large incidents of this, certainly because we don't have a lot of HIB incidents that occur. And then finally, another one that is also very common statewide, that's name calling based on appearance. So just to give you a sense of the consequences, these are consequences that took place over, again, the last reporting period. And some of the HIBs or some of the VVSA incidents that were reported may have more than one consequence associated with it. So for instance, a student might be suspended, but they might also have a writing assignment associated with whatever they may have done. So you've seen this past reporting period, 8 suspensions, 6 detentions, suspension of privileges from time to time. The writing assignment is usually pretty important. That's a very common application where we ask the child to reflect on what they may have done and how the other student may or may not have felt. And then something where our professionals are critical, and these are the student conferences that take place. And I've had the opportunity to witness some of these, and really that's where the professionals that we have sitting here today really shine, their skill set. And we owe them a great deal of gratitude for what they do with our students in terms of offering remediation and assistance. And then also parent meetings. So a lot of this is part of the requirement and part of the law. Certainly when we conduct an investigation, parent phone calls are made immediately, but there's a great deal of follow-up that takes place after an HIV investigation begins. And certainly this is something where an investigation takes place and is concluded, there's a lot of follow-up that takes place to ensure that the student, both the victim and the offender, get the assistance they need to ensure that whatever occurred doesn't occur again. So the format for the rest of the presentation, I thought, would be this. We're going to have the ABS and the administrator come up and run you through, about 7 minutes each, run you through very briefly on the most important thing. And this is, when I used to listen to Mr. Markarian, this was the part that really he'd like to focus on because it's the most important part. What are we doing to educate our students to ensure that this doesn't continue to occur? And you can see, we have low incident rates, but that's still not acceptable. We want to continue to educate, we want to continue to refine what we do with our students, and that's, again, largely in parts of the professionals sitting here and also the professionals who aren't here. So we're going to have each building talk about their individual programs. You'll see how tailored they are, and then we'll take questions from the board at the end of the presentation. So we're going to start with Cedar Hill. We'll start with our guidance counselor, Molly Wilcox, and our principal, Joe Malika.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Good evening, everyone. When I think about the acronym HIV, I think not only in terms of what it stands for, but also the very debilitating effect that it has on individual students, groups of students, and also the school as a whole. And oftentimes that can be very, very challenging. When you think about what it is that takes place day to day in student interaction, you have that sense of what it is that's out there in the way of harassment, intimidation, and bullying. The big three in terms of disrespect to one another. And that's what we try to focus on in terms of recognizing. The idea of harassment, intimidation, and bullying taking place within a school, there is no question that throughout our nation, and even throughout our state, and everywhere in the county, this challenge creates a situation where lives are cut short, and also there's a tremendous waste of human potential. Why does that occur? It occurs because those actions, harassment, intimidation, and bullying, are not natural for our makeup. Each individual strives for an environment that's safe, secure, where they feel connected, they feel recognized, they feel a part of something. They feel free to be who they are and valued for who they are. And when that doesn't occur, it can create depression, anxiety, and it interferes greatly with what it is that our mission is. There's no way that learning can take place. If learning is our mission, then it can only thrive and take place in an environment that is free of harassment, intimidation, and bullying. So how do we combat that? How do we go from that lowest form of behavior, harassment, intimidation, and bullying, individuals who are doing that, and get them to the highest level of behavior based on what psychologist Abraham Maslow would say self-transcendence, the idea that you're conscious of what it is that your words and actions, what your words and actions are having, what type of an effect on those around you. And it's the degree to which we can get our students to that point that determines where we are in terms of HIB. And I will say, through all the work of all these wonderful professionals, everyone for so many years on the board, administrators, teachers, everything that has been done, we certainly can be thankful for the numbers that we see and the nature of the incidents that have been taking place. But we do have to recognize that even one child that has that type of experience is one child too many. And so for that reason, we continue our efforts to be, number one, proactive in terms of what it is that we're doing in programming as far as information, opening our staff members' eyes to approaches. What are we doing in terms of monitoring? And I use the term radar. Do you have your radar up about what it is that's taking place within the building? How close and how connected are we to our families and to our students? And then also, how quick is your response when something does take place? So for us, it's a three-pronged approach. Be proactive as far as your programming. Keep an open mind to what it is that's going on in terms of research in this area and what we can add and continue to introduce that will affect this particular issue. Also, make sure that your radar is constant, that if situations take place, there's a follow-up, there's a monitoring. And certainly, by way of our own role modeling and example, how it is that we all interact with one another in terms of the respect and the connections that we demonstrate as the adults in the building. And finally, that area of response. And what we do say and try to make sure it takes place in our building is when an incident does occur, how quickly do we respond? And to what degree are we following through on policy and procedure in terms of the board-approved approach to an incident that requires an investigation? So I thought maybe we'd go a little bit about where it is that we are with our staff training at Cedar Hill. We really begin in the summertime. This past summer we had an opportunity for our teachers to get involved in internet-based training. They were required to complete the training before starting in September, and they received very useful information about the anti-bullying, Bill of Rights, child abuse, school safety, the state and federal laws as they relate to issues of bullying. We also each year start our school year with a staff orientation where the issue of bullying is covered. We go over district policies and procedures. We introduce the idea of class meetings. We recover and talk about the Obeus bullying method. And we promote respect and tolerance in the classroom by ensuring that enough time is spent on classroom meetings, and also there is review administratively at the team meetings to determine to what degree are teachers focusing on the social and emotional development of their children. We have the monthly school safety team meetings. We also cover HIB at our monthly faculty meetings. And the grade level meetings are a great way to really personalize what may be happening at a particular level, say on a 5th grade in terms of where they are developmentally and the types of things that go on socially with a 5th grader as opposed to what may be going on in kindergarten and 1st grade. And I thought I'd include that we start each day with a morning announcement whereby some aspect of virtue is covered. Respect, responsibility, caring. A morning message where something is said about what it is that should guide our behavior for the day. And it is a hope that by doing that, every day starts with the idea that we're going to focus first on how it is that we're interacting with each other, and then from there move to the idea that we're here to learn. At this point, I'm now happy to call upon Ms. Wilcox, who will talk further about some of the proactive things that we do at Cedar Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Malika. As Mr. Malika said very well, at Cedar Hill, character education is infused beginning at the start of the school day with his morning announcements. So I know that that's a very special part of the day where he discusses what it means to be respectful and to display kind behavior throughout the entire school day. So whether it be on the playground, on the school bus, in the cafeteria. Can you still hear me? Hold on to it. Teachers also begin the school day after the morning announcements with classroom meetings that promote positive behavior. In addition, we have our special area teachers implement monthly lessons based on classroom meetings that matter and the obvious bullying prevention program. We have a buddy class program at Cedar Hill that provides older and younger students with the opportunity to connect with one another. And this is a really positive addition to the school environment. This is something that takes place every single month where students act as role models to their younger peers. In December, when we highlighted the character education trait of caring, buddy classes created kindness chains that were then created to make an entire kindness chain within the school that was then on display in the front of the school at Cedar Hill. Throughout the school year, students display positive behaviors in many ways, whether it be on the playground when they're standing up and being an upstander to their friends, whether it be on the school bus, and it's really important that we recognize students who are standing up for others. So we do this through our I Give a Hoot recognition program all throughout the entire school year. We also have many service projects throughout the school year, and this spring Mrs. Tracy Newton, our librarian and media specialist, and her students are working with Liberty Cycle and Basking Ridge to donate bicycles to the Boys and Girls Club. So that's one program that we're working on currently. We also have many programs that students are able to participate, including Safety Patrol, which is a student program offered to all 5th grade students. So we have about 30 members this school year. And what their role is to promote positive student behavior on the school bus and also in all kindergarten and 1st grade classrooms at both arrival and dismissal time, which is a really important time to be in the classroom to help them with morning and afternoon routine. Our student council has also implemented many school-wide programs this school year. We had the Holidays for Children program where every class at Cedar Hill sponsored a child during the holiday season, and we also participated in the annual food drive this year and donated over 400 pounds of food to the Somerset County Food Bank. Our peer mentoring program, which is facilitated by school social worker Jessica Dubois, includes over 100 4th grade students. During their recess and lunchtime, these students work with the students who are in LLD and ABA classrooms, and they play cooperative games with them and practice communication skills, and it's a really great asset to our school that goes on throughout the entire school year. Just this past week, we recognized Autism Awareness Day, and we are so fortunate at Cedar Hill to have a very supportive family and network and parent base of students, and so they were able to provide us with the opportunity to light it up blue in support of autism awareness and also complete puzzle pieces to donate to money to support autism awareness. So those are just a couple of our programs at Cedar Hill. As Mr. Malika said, it is so important to be proactive and address these programs and support student behavior throughout the school year. So thank you very much. I will turn it over to Oak Street now. And we have our future considerations. So looking forward, we are going to plan a staff college for character education where we plan school-wide assemblies and buddy class activities and lessons for the school year. And we're also hoping to plan a literature review committee where we will review and evaluate literature to create a comprehensive list of character education related books. Thank you very much.
Okay, good evening. My name is Mary Kunzman, and I'm a school counselor at Oak Street School. So, Oak Street, I'm going to run briefly through our trainings that we have. We have our GCN, mandated online staff training, and at Oak Street it's the same as Cedar Hill. It's a requirement for all staff across the district on specific topics. We have monthly faculty meetings. This is another venue for relaying pertinent information, as well as time for committee work. Our school safety team meets monthly with a good sampling from staff, including a parent rep, as well as a variety of grade levels and content areas. One of our functions is to keep a pulse on the social and emotional climate of our school. This is a forum for debriefing, identifying discipline trends, discussing HIV, and new programs. Our new staff teacher orientation, these are trainings and meetings to inform staff on a plethora of topics relevant to the district and to Oak Street School. Our staff college-related courses and book talks. There's a variety of courses that are offered by staff and administration. We have a week of respect. This year, our building dressed in different colors each day to represent our appreciation for different facets of the community, such as respect for the environment, respect for sportsmanship, respect for our first responders, and for oneself. We had class meetings and buddy activities occurred on that same theme. To acknowledge Violence Awareness Week, Oak Street students created anti-violent messages and wrote them on multicolored ribbons, and we tied them to the fence outside of our school. Prior to this, students reflected on ways to build healthy relationships, coping skills, and most importantly, self-care. Guidance lessons were taught in the school focusing on empathy building, which is an essential skill for our young students to build their EQ, or emotional intelligence. To unite as one school, we held an assembly to introduce the 7 habits, which Mr. Graber will touch on in a couple of moments. Under general programs, we have some fantastic programs at Oak Street School to promote pro-social behavior. I'd like to share my favorites. The Great Kindness Challenge. Oak Street became Kindness Certified this year, following our week-long event devoted to performing as many kind acts as possible. It was kicked off with a 50-item checklist and the challenge to perform as many deeds as you can in 1 week. This is not only done in the U.S., but recognized internationally to promote positivity and to prevent bullying, with the belief that kindness leads to world peace. Each student wrote one of their kind acts on a paper hand, and these hands were joined to create a trail throughout our school hallways. Oak Street Character Education Alumni Scholarship. Each year, 2 $500 scholarships have been awarded to Ridge students who have attended Oak Street Elementary School. We look for students who have demonstrated fortitude and character. Candidates write essays, and the scholarship recipients are invited to join us at a special end-of-the-year assembly to share their personal journey building character in Berners Township. We also have family dining, which is something unique to Oak Street School. Each family signs up once a year to dine in the Eagles Cafe with their child. Families have the option to bring in food from their favorite restaurants. A designated table is set up for this purpose. Students are really excited about family dining, and it allows parents the opportunity to experience our warm and welcoming cafe, adorned with hand-painted murals of downtown Basking Ridge. Speaking of our cafe and expectations for respect and responsibility, we have the Golden Tray Award. Each Friday, the lunch aides appoint this to the class that has shown great synergy and consistency, cleaning up after themselves. Students do not want to miss this announcement at the end of each lunch on Friday. You will see the students dancing, doing the conga with their teachers on the way out of the cafe. Lastly, I'd like to speak to you about the role of the school counselor in violence prevention. We make it a priority to get to know our students individually. We build relationships with them, and we're looking for behavioral changes that occur. We collaborate with teachers, nurses, administrators, parents to communicate concerns or at-risk behavior. We utilize individual counseling, group counseling, teaching our guidance modules, and facilitating class meetings when the need occurs. We are very fortunate to have this role, and it is a critical one. While we lay the foundation for our students to grow and fill positions of the next generation of leaders. With that said, Mr. Graber will share how we've begun the process of implementing the Leader in Me program at Oak Street School.
Good evening. I'm Scott Graber, and I have the privilege of being the assistant principal at Oak Street School. As Ms. Kunzman alluded to, we began our implementation of the Leader in Me program by starting with stage 1. The program is based on the principles and foundation of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits for Successful People. We also started examining this book as an administrative team during our summer retreat and decided to carry it through into our character ed program at Oak Tree. To start, we met with our committee to do some initial planning. We designed and implemented touchstones, which are visible at the entrance in our building, with the handprint, which has become an unofficial symbol of Oak Street. We have the habits are listed on there, as well as the treat others the way you would like to be treated slogan. Additionally, we have a bulletin board in our cafe that includes the tree with the 7 habits, as well as each habit stated and what it means. Each classroom receives, as each habit is introduced, 8x11 poster with the habit, definition, examples, which are displayed in each of the classrooms. We also implemented a 0 period this year, which means we do a condensed day, allowing for a 25-minute period at the end of the day. And each of those Wednesdays is designated to different activities. One Wednesday is designated to some type of buddy class activity where the older classes and younger classes combine to work collaboratively, demonstrating habit 6 of synergy. We also have a lesson with related literacy as well as written responses. They do class meetings based on the habits, as well as a school-wide monthly assembly. During those assemblies, as I said, we initially introduced the 7 habits early on in the year, and then since then have been introducing and elaborating on each of the habits each month. Also, Dr. Costa will have the great opportunity to visit the A.B. Combs School later this month, which is actually considered the epicenter of where the whole Leader in Me program began. And also I had the privilege of, through our staff college program, conducting a book talk for staff on the 7 habits, and was lucky enough to have representatives from 5 of 6 buildings. Future considerations as we move forward to implement the program effectively. It is a process, and we plan for it to probably take 4 or 5 years before we're fully implemented. Next year, we hope to start stage 2. A big piece of that will be the take-backs that Dr. Costa brings back from her visit. I'm also exploring the possibility, we found there's an open house right in Bethlehem, PA, with one of their lighthouse schools. So I may hope to visit out there as well to bring back some additional information. We are going to offer a staff college for our character ed committee this summer so that we can continue to look at the best practices that Dr. Costa brings back, as well as continue with our planning of activities, with our hope of creating a continuum that would go from kindergarten to 5th grade eventually. So each year we build on the next. We also are looking at possible guest speakers. We once had a peace patrol that we're considering re-implementing, which basically makes the older students role models for the younger students and teaching them healthy social decision-making, especially during recess time. Also, we're going to work with our PTO to reinstate our Parent Academy, which would be an opportunity for counselors, administration, and teachers to present and keep the parents in the loop in terms of HIV, such topics as HIV versus conflict, our implementation and basis for the Leader in Me program and updates to that program. And our most recent discussion has revolved around Student Leadership Day. Right now it's looking like a combination of a career day where we would take parents and people from the community to talk about their careers. Ties in nicely to to STEM, and it would also serve as an opportunity to role model for our students who will later in the day present on things that they would consider to be an expert in and be the leaders, whether it be a hobby or something that they're very knowledgeable about. I'm going to turn it over back to Ms. Kunzman, who will just go over a few pictures of some of the things that we discussed.
So to bring a visual to some things we just spoke about and things that we're very proud of, here is a photo collage of some of our Oak Street School activities, starting at the top left and going clockwise. The winning class last year in the kickball tournament, the recipients of the Oak Street Character Education Scholarship. This is one of our recent families dining at family dining at the Eagles Cafe. For the Great Kindness Challenge, their hands were at Oak Street School with acts of kindness. Oak Street became a kindness certified school this year. The Golden Tray, the winning class in each grade, from grades kindergarten through 4th, the tray is mounted outside the classroom door. The 7 Habits tray, which is displayed in our cafe. Our 5th grade student council members assisting in loading the Somerset County Food Bank van after a food drive, and our Oak Street Touch Tone for students to touch daily and make a commitment to treat others as they want to be treated. So thank you, and now we'll turn it over to Liberty Corner School to speak next.
Good evening, I'm Jenna Hawkswell, Assistant Principal at Liberty Corner School, here tonight with Eric Rauschenberger, who is our school guidance counselor. Some of the things that we have on our slides are what other schools have already gone over, so we'll keep it brief and maybe just share some of the new things with you. Over the summer, we do a summer staff college for the teachers, and at this time, we prepare with them and provide for them resources that allows the seamless integration of character education into the school day. So we usually have a presenter. This year we had Eileen Dagowitz, who is from character.org, and she gave us some pointers and kind of confirmed some things that we are doing right and sparked some interest in us to try some new things. We kind of come up with a mission for the new year and our focus. We like to keep it fresh and keep it new. We come up with lesson plans, activities, and everything is there for the teachers. We provide them with a binder. They have a Google folder. So it's really about providing resources to make the program easy for the teachers to implement so that it's really happening and happening all throughout the day. We have a character education teacher committee, and they monitor throughout the year and add to the program. This year, the committee presented to the staff on the rules and logical consequences for the classroom based on responsive classroom. And that was really in response to what the teachers had asked for out of the committee. So they researched that and shared it with the whole school. We have a character education block each Friday, and we have ongoing scheduled activities, including assemblies that are put on by students, and each grade level is assigned a pillar. We have classroom read-alouds and discussions where books are provided that we wrote grants to receive the books, and each teacher in their classroom has a supply of books related to all the pillars and also to anti-bullying topics. We do classroom cross-grade level buddy activities, so you'll have older students and younger students working together on these topics, and also classroom meetings as mentioned earlier. We do have staff trainings on using classroom meetings to encourage cooperation, inclusion, and respectful communication. And these classroom meetings build a strong sense of community in the school. We have a school safety team meetings at which at the time we review definition, assess our program, and we talk a little bit about investigation scenarios and what constitutes as bullying and what constitutes as more of a conflict. And we practice that with the staff so that they're well versed in making that distinguishment as well. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Eric, and he's going to talk a little bit about the programs that we do with the students, and really the teachers kind of turnkey this from the Character Education Committee, then comes up with all these wonderful ideas. So a lot of these are teacher-run programs.
Great, thank you, Jenna. Good evening, everyone. It's very, very good to be here. So as Mrs. Hawkswell said, I'm just going to highlight some of the programs we do. So basically, our philosophy throughout the years with our students at LCS, we're continually focusing on the character traits, specifically compassion and especially empathy, as one of the other schools mentioned earlier. It's really become ingrained in our curriculum and the school day. Empathy is considered to be the social emotion, trying to walk in another child's shoes, trying to imagine how another child is feeling. And that is just so important a skill for any child. Research has shown that children who learn the character traits of compassion and empathy as children will grow up to be compassionate and more empathetic adolescents, and then teenagers, and then finally adults. Research has also shown the best way to become compassionate and empathetic is by serving others as well as by helping others, making our lives about other people rather than just about ourselves. So at LCS, we believe strongly in service learning in school and also outside of school. So I'm going to take a few moments just to highlight some of our programs. The first one mentioned is Booster Buddies, which we've done for several years now. This involves 4th and 5th graders who give up their recess on every Friday. And if you know elementary, recess is important. But they do. They give it up to work with our wonderful music teacher, Mrs. Carol Beadle, and our 2 fantastic PE teachers, Mr. Fico and Mr. Henthorn. And they work with, while the music teacher and PE teachers are teaching kindergarten or 1st grade classes, 4th and 5th graders work with these classes, helping teach skills and really just modeling appropriate behavior. Another program we're excited about, we just started as a mini unit. It's called Lion's Den, after a mascot. And it's designed for children who really want to go above and beyond our traditional character ed program. And it's been very successful. This year we have, this spring, we have students in grades 1 through 5. We meet once a week. Some of the projects we've done, one in particular was we made appreciation cards for those staff who often go unappreciated. Our lunch recess leaders, our cafeteria staff, our custodial staff. And we actually hand-delivered the letters to those staff members. We also just recently helped clean up the playground, which was a lot of fun. There's a lot of trash out there, unfortunately, but we cleaned it up. Our student council we wanted to mention, because our student council does play a pivotal role in our character education program. Every November we do an Appalachian Toy Drive. We've been doing for about 20 years. Dr. Pecoraro had started that. The kids are very hands-on, collecting the toys, advertising, talking it up with the school. This Friday, actually, our student council is going to help the special area teachers, PE, music, teach the rest of the school about fairness. And kind of the mantra that fair is not always equal, which a lot of the children need, it's helpful for them to learn. Another program, our peer mediators, is 5th graders, and we have a program called Peace Patrol. And these students go outside, they again give up the recess time, and they go out during 3rd grade recess, and they help work with their 3rd grade, the younger children, and again, model appropriate behaviors, help organize games, help work out conflicts. One other one I wanted to mention, it's not on the slide, but it's our 5th grade car wash. So it's also a plug to get in there. This is an annual fundraiser. This is our 15th year. And it is volunteer, but I can say we usually have about 100 5th graders. We have about 90 kids who do it. And the only kids who cannot do it is because they already have a prior engagement. So they're very disappointed when they can't do it. Every year we choose a local charity with the children's input. This year we're donating to 2 wonderful charities, Brian's Dream and the Valerie Fund. Both are local agencies which help families struggling with battling cancer. So save the date, this Friday, June 10th, after school. If you're available, bring your dirty car. And the kids do a pretty good job washing cars. But now we'd like to just show you a short video that shows a little more. We thought, who better than to explain our character program than our students?
But unfortunately, when the slides were converted from slides to the presentation here, it's not going to show because it doesn't look like it's active. But basically, it's a representative of the KFC, which is the Kids for Character Committee that we have at the school. These kids are nominated by their peers, just based on their character, and they made a mission statement for the school, and it had a lot to do with being upstanders and anti-bullying, and there was a nice little speech from the children, but that's okay. We can imagine it, and it'll just shorten up our presentation a little bit, too. So 2 things that we're looking forward to and finding out more about, suggestions for improvement. We're thinking about 2 programs. So one is the social decision making. That might sound familiar to you. The special ed program is using that currently. So what it is a classroom management system. It allows for consistent rules throughout the school. It teaches students to be reflective, non-impulsive, and responsible decision makers. We're going to have Cindy Alman from Newmark School in Scotch Plains come and speak to us at our Character Education Staff College this summer. And the teachers then will turnkey it. They'll decide, is this something that will work with their school, and modify it so that it fits into our program. And we were just hoping to have some common language. We have feedback from the teachers is that it would be really nice to have that common language, so what you're teaching them in kindergarten about behavior applies in 5th grade, it applies downstairs in the gymnasium or in the lunchroom. We can all use the same language. Another thing that we're looking into is peaceful playgrounds, and this is an international program. And as you know, recess can be a hot spot for conflict. And unfortunately, students waste a lot of time arguing about what they're going to play and how they're going to play, and most of the time is not spent actually playing the game. So Peaceful Playgrounds is a program that provides a consistent recess environment, productive and positive playground activities that are taught to the students. There's structure, there's game rules, violations are clear, so there's no arguing, there's less fighting, and there's more positive social interaction. And it is actually proven to reduce bullying and conflicts. So these are the 2 programs that we're looking into maybe incorporating next year. So we thank you for your time, and we'll turn it over to Mount Prospect.
Good evening, I'm Paul Spola. I'm the assistant principal at Mount Prospect School. I'm here with Ms. Nestor Kukuro, who is our school counselor. So I'm going to talk about a lot of the trainings that we do with our staff members, including our parent volunteers, our teachers, our aides, our lunch aides as well. And then Ms. Kukuro is going to talk about a lot of the actual programs that those trainees help benefit and help prepare for. So, you can hear me. We begin each school year really in the summertime. For the past 3 summers, our Panther Pride Committee, which is our Character Ed Committee, has gotten together to work on social emotional learning. And that's kind of been the focus for our building for the past couple of years, and we're actually hoping to ramp that up as we go into the following school year. But this is really a nice opportunity for our building, for our Panther Pride Committee to come together to look at some research on social emotional learning, and it really becomes a work session for the following school year where they can plan the activities, they can take some of that newest research and really kind of put it into place so that it is affecting as many students as possible during the year. This is also an opportunity to look at our existing Character Ed program and anti-bullying program and really decide how best we're going to execute that during the school year. Our school safety team meets monthly. It conducts once a year a self-assessment as required by the law, and using that self-assessment, the committee then decides what types of anti-bullying activities and where it really needs to focus during the school year. It also talks about the hot spots for bullying in the building, how we can hopefully eliminate those hot spots, and really what kind of training do we need for our staff members, for our students, and for our parents and visitors. Our monthly faculty meetings are another opportunity for training. We meet monthly. We don't devote every single faculty meeting to training for anti-bullying measures, but we do touch on Character Ed at every single faculty meeting. We talk about social emotional learning, and we do take time to highlight some of the trainings that we've been doing or some of the programs that we've been doing throughout the year with our students in our different programs. They mentioned the GCN training, that's the online training that is done each year by all our faculty, our lunch aides, our visitors, our volunteers, and our instructional aides, and that includes topics such as anti-bullying, child abuse, Section 504, suicide prevention. So it really covers a wide range of training areas. We also train our teachers to prepare them for the Week of Respect and Violence Awareness Staff Training. Ms. Cooper is going to talk a little bit more about that in detail, but we've really expanded that not just to be those single weeks during October, but really kind of a month of respect and a month of violence awareness training. And again, a lot of that happens in the summertime and then into the fall as our safety team and also our Panther Pride Committee begin meeting on a regular basis. And then finally, most recently, in one of our Parent Advisory Council meetings, we were asked to talk about identifying student behavior and really how to interpret that. And so we presented parents most recently with some guidelines that they could use when students come home and their children come home and talk to them about something that may have happened in school or on the walk home, and really how to decide how best to help their child either deal with that on their own or to access the right kind of help so that they're able to get whatever behavior is happening to stop. So those are all things that we've been doing lately in Mount Prospect. And I want to just refer you to the two pictures on the screen. The picture on the right is some of our students. They are weighing boxes from our food drive, and again, Ms. Cooper will talk a little bit about that. And on the bottom, we take our 5th grade student council members in the fall, in November, down to Bridgewater to deliver the food that we have gathered together. And that's just a picture of them with some of the boxes. That was maybe just about a third of the boxes that they brought in and weighed. And we let all the students know at our assemblies how much we collected and how their efforts went. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Cooper to talk a little bit about the different programs that we involve our students with.
Thank you, Mr. Simpola. Okay, so I'm just going to touch on a few of these items here. First, for this school year, our theme was Share Happiness. So this was presented at the first whole school assembly, where our teachers shared examples of how they share their own happiness with others. And then it carried over through an art project that ended up being our year-long display. Each student got to show or draw a little picture of how they share happiness, which is what you see here on the screen. So our Panther Pride consists of the traits of positive, respect, integrity, determination, and empathy. Each trait is highlighted for 2 months through assemblies, morning meetings, special area teacher lessons. And for each trait, our teachers are provided ways in which they could incorporate these traits into their classroom lessons. So for the first assembly, the trait will be introduced through a quote or some type of video. And then for that second month, the trait will be celebrated on ways in which that trait was shown through student participation. Our anti-bullying classroom meetings. So classroom teachers as well as special area teachers come together here throughout the month and conduct bullying prevention lessons, and these also coincide with the Pride Trait of the month. So our drive, as Mr. Zampola had mentioned, we host that twice a year, and it's really student-driven. So the students will come in, they'll drop off their items in shopping carts, and then our student council prepares the boxes, they weigh them, and they also bring them down to the Somerset Food Pantry. So for our Week of Respect, we kind of celebrated throughout the whole month of October. So we hosted weekly activities, such as we had a music connecting character assembly, we wore red and walked for respect, and we had Halloween safety tips and door decorating with our buddy classes. Okay, so our International Day. This is one of our favorite days when we can celebrate how diverse of a school we are. So community members come in, they create presentations to educate and bring an awareness of our diversity and the many cultures that comprise the Mount Prospect School. And then at the evening, students and families are welcome back to sample worldwide foods and also to view dances from around the world performed by our 3rd graders. We also have counseling groups that I host that are consisting of a friendship lunch bunch, banana split for students going through a separation or a divorce, self-esteem, newcomers club for students new to our district, and stress busters. I also focus on counseling modules and the themes of identification and expression of feelings, self-esteem, bullying prevention, and appreciation of others are discussed. And we have a peer mentors program where students in 4th grade apply to participate as a peer mentor with students with autism. And during the recess, they come in, they go into the classrooms, and they work on a pre-planned activity with those students. Okay, so looking into next year, we are hoping to come up with a school culture and climate initiative. And this is something that we have researched through our school safety team. It's actually a partnership between United Way of Northern New Jersey and the College of St. Elizabeth. So this is really, it's not any type of curriculum. It actually is a self-evaluation process. So it provides the school with means to improve their culture. So really what we'll be looking to do is kind of start from the bottom, evaluate where we are as a school, our climate and culture, and hopefully celebrate the areas in which we're succeeding and address the areas in which we could improve upon. And this is all rooted in the work of Dr. Marie Elias, who is doing a lot of research right now in social emotional learning. And with that, I think we'll turn it over to William Annan.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Lederer. I'm an assistant principal here at WAMS. This is Dr. Bush, our student assistance counselor. You know, over the last couple of years, we've gotten kind of reflective in terms of the message that we're sharing, not only with students, but with our staff and the school community. We've spent a lot of time thinking about, are we sending the same message? Is the message getting out there and clearly defining what exactly harassment, intimidation, and bullying is? And so as we've been reflective, we've said and spent some time speaking with, a lot of time actually, speaking with students in grade level assemblies. So grade level administrators will have a conversation several times throughout the year to identify behaviors that, you know what, maybe 10 years ago or 5 years ago were acceptable, today they're not so much. And getting that message across to students that sometimes, you know, what happens at home or what parents have said was okay when they were growing up, or when I was growing up, is a lot different from today. So we feel it's a really important connection to make, not only with our students, but with our school community, to get that message out there and define exactly what this is. When we're talking about our school community, how do we get that message out? We've spent time at back to school nights every year because it's a great audience, a large audience, and we discuss that. The Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights. Dr. Bush has put together a great pamphlet here that we share with parents, and we go through specific scenarios appropriate to the middle school, what constitutes appropriate behavior and not. And how about for staff? We talk a lot at faculty meetings. We give them real scenarios. We give them videos that we get to identify specific situations. You've heard about hot spots in the school. We ask staff to identify those spots, to look into those areas, to help us supervise those areas, all in an effort to eliminate this HIV. We've also had PTO presentations that talk about cyberbullying with our school resource officer and also Dr. Bush, our student assistance counselor. So what happens here at WAMS actually on a day-to-day basis, the programs and trainings that we look at. On the left side, you're looking at programs that every student is exposed to. On the right side, those are opportunities that students have in part to do if they so choose. I just want to talk a little bit first about character education, which everyone experiences. We have 15 meetings, we call them morning meetings throughout the year. Those are grade level meetings, students meet in small groups with their peers and a teacher advisor to discuss various topics throughout different grade levels. As you can see, anything from 6th graders to transition, 7th grade self-esteem, 8th grade lifelong learning, preparing them to enter Ridge High School. We also have something called Viking values here. Those are slips where a teacher can identify a student for going above and beyond the normal, everyday behavior by displaying things like respect, responsibility, courage, and integrity. If the student receives that, the grade level administrator receives that sheet. We meet with the student we will contact the parent, just congratulate them, and thank the student and the parent for their child, just going above and beyond, as I said. I really want to talk about the interdisciplinary units too. I think it's really important not to just talk about, addressing behavior after the fact, right? So we take a lot of time, and I know the subject area supervisors spend a lot of time looking at how can we use these interdisciplinary units to get the message across to the students as well about things like harassment, intimidation, bullying, inappropriate behavior. Some of the highlights we have, 6th grade, we talk a lot about immigration. 7th grade, we have Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is one of the most powerful days we have here all year. 8th grade discusses a lot about civil rights. Looking at our ELA literature, the novels that are selected are closely tied into the middle school age student experience. And so there are topics that come up in these novels are things like conflict, or things like self-esteem, bullying comes up. So we feel it's really interwoven nicely and connected, not just in terms of developing and delivering that message of HIP, but also within our curriculum. Some highlights on the right side we have, just for students to get involved in. We have peer helpers, great transition it provides for 5th to 6th grade students. We have our student council does some terrific fundraising and events throughout the year, Wham Slams, Locks of Love. We have several food drives throughout the year. A great program we've seen working with our peer helpers is this inclusion activity where we have adaptive physical education classes, and we have some peer helpers from other phys ed classes that work with students. The feedback we get from both groups, from parents regarding this interaction among those students has been terrific. We have a new committee here, it's called Eco Schools. If you look outside the back door there, it's a green flag flying there. We've received the highest award from that organization for just a responsibility to our environment and how we take care of our school and how our students are educated in terms of eco-friendly activities. WAMS Expo is really a celebration of talent we have at the end of the year. It's a great day. It ranges anything from, I see Mr. McCarthy, we do letters to troops there, anything from letters to troops to all the way to a band and choir. It's just a great day for our students to really celebrate themselves. I think that's an important part too, not just, unfortunately sometimes all students, we all make bad decisions, but let's celebrate the good too. There are a lot of great things that go on. And one thing I left off here, it's really hot off the presses, but yesterday, I don't know if anyone realizes this, but yesterday was declared a Day of Kindness in Berners Township. Okay. It was declared that by our mayor, and it was as a result of 2 of our students here at WAMS. They petitioned the town council and the mayor, and it was in the Burnersville News that yesterday was a Day of Kindness in Berners Township. So we picked that up here at WAMS, and we're celebrating this week as a week of kindness. Students, we're just asking them to complete some kindness cards. We're going to have a little bit of a celebration and recognize that later in the year. And just looking at the planning and future considerations, where we want to go from this, staying on that positive note of how can we not only identify some of the HIP stuff, but how do we prevent it? I think what we want to do, and this has kind of become popular with talking with the elementaries, is let's develop this character education program more. And we have a committee here at WAMS that's really starting to develop. A lot of excitement is built in. So we're going to hold a staff college this summer to really take a step back and look at our character education program, assess it, and really say, how can we incorporate things like service learning and that empathy piece of not just sitting and listening to a lesson, but actually experiencing it. So we're really excited about that. We've had the opportunity to visit a national school of character here in New Jersey at the middle school level. It was a great day. Dr. Bush was there. It was really uplifting for our staff, and I know that gets passed on to our students, so we're excited about that. And we also want to continue to gather feedback from our students. We do survey our students each year to gather information based on what their experience was in character education, areas that we need improvement on, areas that they want to learn about, areas they think that are important. So we're excited about that. We ask our staff for feedback as well. And we do want to talk more and develop more with our school community, feedback on what they feel the school climate is here at WAMS. So, we're excited where we've come to, and we're even more excited about where we're going with this. Thank you, and Rich is next.
Thank you. Last but not least, Ridge High School. We won't be as long. Sean, keep to your 7 minutes, okay? There are some repeats here. The online staff mandated training, which highlights the anti-bullying Bill of Rights. And the purpose was to strengthen the standards and procedures for preventing and responding to HIV. New teacher orientation, the Ridge High School new teacher orientation, Olvea's bullying prevention program. We really took grip at the high school of this program, and we've been holding on to the principles all the way through. So when we get the new teachers at Ridge High School, it's really important to talk with them and let them understand how at the high school it's not really so easy to detect bullying. Sometimes it's very subtle, but talking about how it's important that they understand how it actually affects, going back to what Joe Malika was saying, even at the high school level, how it affects children and how it can affect their attendance at Ridge High School, creating possible depression and anxiety. So that program is for all students, and it's preventative and responsive. The Ridge High School's anti-bullying rules and on-the-spot interventions. We review that with the entire staff in the beginning of the year. What are you going to do when you see bullying in your classroom? What are you going to do when you see bullying in the hallway? Or if you're not sure. Okay, we don't want people our staff members just to assume that they're joking, assume that they're friends, even if the other student is smiling and inside the student may be crying. So we really are grabbing hold of these on-the-spot interventions and asking teachers really to hone in if they're not sure if it's bullying or if it's conflict, as we talked about earlier. So really hone in, talk to the students after class. We spent a lot of time preparing for the big week up at Ridge High School. That's the Week of Respect, and Mr. Gilkin is going to talk more about the programs. But we do a lot of planning all throughout the year for October's Week of Respect. So we do a lot of training in there. And we also really encourage our staff and like our staff to get involved with that Week of Respect, showing a united front to combat bullying at the high school, and that we're not going to tolerate it. So we get the staff involved, and we really are making an effort to change the climate at Ridge High School in and out of the classroom, on the athletic fields, everywhere at Ridge High School to make a change. Mr. Gilkin is now going to talk about some of the programs.
First, I want to say that clearly tonight we have a large foundation to build from. The elementary schools and middle schools do an excellent job in their social emotional learning and character education programs. I'm actually going to start with the last slide here, which talks about the last bullet there. So when the kids come up to the high school, they have a lot of options to join the community there, don't they? Beyond just the curriculum that they're going to be taking on when they make their 8th grade schedule to 9th grade. There are 34 varsity sports, 86 clubs, and a very active music, theater, dance, and that's the art program, prep art program. So there's lots of ways to join with the community. There's lots of ways to be successful and participate. And many of our kids, when we leave in the afternoons, the school is almost as full as it was in the morning. There are a ton of kids still there after school with a bunch of adults running something. So that's where I want to start, because that starts at elementary, getting kids involved in all different activities and clubs you guys named, and then they put this into fruition when they come up to the high school. Some of the things that we do, going back to the programming, we have a really nice speaker coming in, Dr. Mike Fallon. He's a dynamic psychologist and theater performer. He's been coming to our school for at least 10 years since I've been there. And he is a dynamic speaker that talks through characters, through voices. Puts on a show for kids so they can relate to what it is to be in a high school. in different ways. Through the week of respect, the staff and students, both in solidarity, wore blue shirts. The peer leaders have run a program for the entire first semester, and they work with the freshmen. These are upperclassmen working with freshmen on making good decisions, choices in social situations in the school and outside the school. Announcements, posters, PTO, and the parents helped out a lot of them. We signed an anti-bullying pledge. We hang up on the wall. They make a pledge not to bully each other. There's a line. Every kid signs that along with the staff. It's really nice. The School Violence Awareness Week this year, the safety team committee decided to couple their efforts with the Women's Resource Center. And so we had a collection and won football games here at the high school. And our peer leaders went around and collected money at the gate and a bunch of other places to help support folks suffering from domestic violence. We made a donation to those folks. But that's just, there's a ton of service learning opportunities at the high school. Kids are engaged, clearly starting at the primary levels to work on giving to others. And this just continues throughout the high school. That's just one example. One of the pieces that I wanted to mention too is some of the clubs here, just to give you some names to put with these numbers. We have the student with the Ridge Peer Organization, Peer Leadership, Ethics Club, the Ambassador Club. I had a chance to speak to the Ambassador Club. These are a bunch of kids who were new kids themselves at one point, moving into Burns Township. They decided to start a club recently that allowed they to reach out to new folks coming into the town. So when they're coupled with new kids, we have a bunch of kids in that room that are ESL kids that came from another country, and now welcome other kids from other countries, other parts of the globe. It's an awesome program. I had no idea we even had there's 86 clubs at high school. So that's our program. Mr. Sack, you want to speak on any more of the issues here?
That was part one. No, I'm just kidding. No. So I want to thank everybody who came tonight. Really, you can just give me a round of applause. You can see that while we report the figures to the state, it's really the programming that's the most important thing. And you can see that it starts really in the summer with our staff, and it carries through the whole year with students. And you can see these professionals continue to refine. You can see some unique programs to the buildings, and that's really why we modified our presentation this year, so you can get a sense of really what's taking place in each of your buildings. So we'll open it up to questions now, or we can go right to the budget presentation. Questions first. Yes.
So is there a typical way that HIV incidents tend to come to the attention of the administration, or is it just all different sources?
Any one of those folks could answer this question, but since we could spend most of the evening talking about that, I'll just answer it generally. It can really come from any source, and that actually is the way the law is set up too, that the reports can come from anyone. It can come from the victim, it can come from a witness, it may even come from a staff member, it may come from another administrator. It depends obviously on the nature of the allegation, but I think that's the nice thing about the law, that it could be anyone that's reporting the incident. Yeah, so actually the hotspots, the state doesn't use that term, they use locations, but it's really the same thing that Mr. Lederer talked about. It's definitely the hallway. We know the hallway is a hotspot. The lunchroom can be a hotspot. The bus is another place. Not as many things happen outside the school building. Sometimes things will happen at school-sponsored events, but you can see this year, we didn't have a lot of hotspots, but if you're just going by what we reported, looking for locations, there you go. You can see classroom, corridor, that's actually low. I looked last year, there were more incidents reporting period 1 in the corridor than there were in the classroom. So I would say the hallway is probably your biggest hotspot. Any other questions? Not a question? A comment?
I think of intimidation, humiliation, and bullying, and I think you've taken it to another dimension. I see getting along with one another. We're all a little different as individuals. We get along. respect one another, help one another. That's a little bit different message from me that I relate to better, I think. And then I look at the world situation in contrast. Maybe some of the adults should have this program before. Superman, and all the movies, San Bernardino, Paris, Belgium, my gosh, the politicians, look at the way they're yelling at each other. Crime, drugs, killings. Maybe this program, wouldn't it be wonderful if this made that?
Okay, with that, I suggest a 3 or 4 minute, maybe just stretch break, bathroom break if anybody needs it, and then I will transition to our next presentation. All right? Maybe take 5, as they say. Okay. We can kind of pull ourselves back together here. We'll talk about some other information that we wanted to present tonight, basically in response to questions that arose at our last meeting to try to continue our discussion on our budget for next year. I wanted to highlight where we are currently this year with respect to our class size. I promised I would provide some information with respect to class size this evening, so we'll start by quickly going through that. These are basically average class sizes. We'll be looking at averages across the district. With respect to Cedar Hill School, you can see the current arrangement in terms of our K-5 classes, the number of sections, the average class size at each grade level, and the same pattern flows forward here for the other elementary schools. Liberty Corner, Oak Street School, Prospect, and of course we also have some self-contained programs and special education programs running at each of the schools, and of course that varies quite a bit depending on which school, which programs are offered. And you can see that in Mount Prospect, we have our preschool, full-day preschool program. We're holding autism programs at Cedar Hill and Mount Prospect, LLD at Cedar Hill and Liberty Corner. And we also provide some resource room and in-class support services at the elementary school level as well. Going into the middle school and the high school, we have the following average class sizes for different programs for our special needs students, similar to the elementary schools, autism, LLD, behavioral disabilities is the BD. The AS that you see at William Annan is for the academic support classes. RR is resource room classes, and ICS, ICR classes are mainstream classes with a special education teacher working with the general education teacher. At the high school, it's a very similar format. The SSH are supervised study halls. And then these are the average class sizes at Ridge High School and William Annan School in the major content areas that we offer our classes. You'll notice the largest number in the lower right-hand corner at William Annan is a function of our large music classes here in this building. So to try to get to many of the other questions that came up, and what our plan is to try to address them through the end of the month when we get to our final public hearing on the budget. I want to spend a little bit more time this evening talking about some of the other issues that came up at the last board meeting and try to get a little bit more education overall in terms of how we manage and work with our budget process. Last time that we had a meeting a week ago tonight, Mr. McLaughlin, I thought, did a great job kind of presenting the technicalities of our budget with respect to the way that the budget has to get submitted to the Department of Education through the accounting structure that has to take place when you're submitting the budget through the NJDOE's budget software. So I want to try to add a little bit to that conversation just from a conversational sort of standpoint and think about the philosophy that goes into what we do when we're trying to run programs and build our budget to support our programs. And I think that the one thing that always keeps coming back to, of course, is the student and the students and the students. You know, we really try to make the students the first priority, not necessarily staff, but the kids. The kids come first. And safety, obviously, is a major consideration. We want the students to have what they need, and we want a safe environment for the kids. And then from there, we get into the programs. Our goal is to maintain the programs that we have and to add programs where we can. What does it mean to maintain programs? Well, you get in a lot of conversation about programs and maintaining programs. And does maintaining programs mean that once you start a program, you always have that program forever? Well, we know that that's not the case. Sometimes you have a change in course. Sometimes you have a change in student interest. Sometimes you no longer run a world language program, for example, that doesn't have the enrollment. So maintaining programs is largely about trying to meet the needs of the students to maintain the programs that you have, while at the same time looking at things that you might want to add. Responsible stewardship, obviously, we are stewards of the taxpayers' students and their financial resources. Two very important things to most people, their children and their money. So we try to be very responsible in dealing with both of those entities, if you will. And of course, we have to deal with mandates that come and go with the state. I think I said go. Did I say go? That come and come and come and keep coming. There's not a lot of going, unfortunately, but we have to respond to deal with those mandates as well. So with that said, in our recent history, one of the major issues that we've had to deal with is the 2% tax cap. Going into our 6th budget in a row, we are holding taxes at 2%, meaning that the increase on the local levy has been at 2% or less, actually, over the last several years, and this will be our 6th budget in a row sticking to that cap. We know, as Mr. McLaughlin highlighted in the last meeting, that we also have an issue of a state aid formula that, quite frankly, hasn't been funded in quite some time and has accrued to millions of dollars of lost aid for our district. Beyond that, we try to take an approach of what's happening that seems to be a challenge to manage from a budgetary perspective beyond 2% increases. So anytime you have a cost area in your budget that's going up more than 2% consistently over time, it's an area of concern because you know that at best your budget's going to increase by 2%. Keep in mind, it's not a 2% increase on the entire budget, it's a 2% increase on the levy. So it's not really a 2% increase on the whole budget. Nevertheless, if you're looking at different cost centers throughout the budget, and they're going up 2.1% or up 1.8%, or even within margins of 2%, over time, those aren't areas that you're as concerned about compared to areas that seem to be consistently over 2%. Sometimes you get surprised, as we did this year with transportation. Other areas that we have had to deal with that are consistently above 2% over the long term have been healthcare costs. Yes, we've occasionally had some good years, but for the most part, those are going to rise at greater than 2% and sometimes significantly more than 2%. Having to manage the ACA, as you see on the slide there, or the Affordable Care Act, has made managing that cost more challenging, for sure. Extraordinary costs, we touched on that briefly the last meeting, and some people had some questions about extraordinary costs in the budget, and the DOE's budget software are extraordinary costs inclusive of one-to-one aid services compared to aid services that are within programs. Because we've had a lot of conversations about instructional aids, and instructional aids are cost-centered with the program that they're in. However, there are certain situations that may not be specific to a program that fall into the extraordinary aid cost part of the budget, although the vast majority of the aids are not budgeted within that extraordinary aid section of the budget that Mr. McLaughlin referred to last week. The other issue that can be a significant area of concern is technology and trying to keep up with technology. We have actually managed that cost center pretty well by having a placeholder, if you will, in the budget, and we've been able to finance technology at very low interest rates. So that placeholder has kind of helped us along with the technology issue. So we feel like we've got that handled for the short term at least. Another question that came up when we met last week was, could we look ahead? Could we project out a little ways beyond the 16-17 school year? So we worked on that a little bit, but this is a tricky area. And the reason I say it's a tricky area is because it's very difficult to predict the things that might come along that you're not aware of right now. This time last year, we weren't thinking about having a spike in transportation costs, but here we are. That's the kind of curveball that could come your way, and you have to deal with it. However, because it was requested, we want to take a stab at it here, and we've done this in the past. We typically make the assumption that our tax increase stays capped at 2%, and meaning that the tax levy for the general budget. And keep in mind, our budget has different components: the general operating budget, the debt service budget, the grant part of the budget. We're just focusing on our day-to-day general operating expenses for this conversation. Fund balance stays approximately $2.1 million. It's a little bit of a complicated factor there when we get into the issue of what fund balance is, but kind of think of it as a rollover, if you will, of cash from one year to the next that's audited and has to be put into the budget by law if you have more than a certain percentage of your general operating expenses at the end of the year. It goes into future year budgets as part of the legal requirement in the budget process. Assuming that all other revenue is basically flat, things like tuition in, things like miscellaneous rentals, assuming all of this revenue stays roughly flat as we have in the current year. These are the assumptions on revenue. So before we look at this 3-year projection, let's also look at assumptions on expenses. Okay, so if we assume that revenue goes up roughly 2% or stays more or less flat depending on the funding area, the increase really just coming from the tax levy, what are the things that we have seen costing more than 2%? And do we anticipate that those things may cost more than 2% going forward if we're going to project forward a couple of years? We are concerned about the trend in health insurance costs being a persistent problem. We're concerned about the cost of out-of-district tuition placements and or settlements that occur after we've completed the budgeting process. The cost of extraordinary services, program enrollment increases, when we have students that move into the district in certain programs or enrollment changes up or down, those factors will definitely have an impact on the budget, as we've seen over time. Transportation costs we added because we're in a little bit of an unknown scenario right now, where we anticipate that we're going to be working with the Ed Services Commission to deal with this cost, but it's probably going to be something that takes some time to try to get at a more steady level. So we're looking at that over the next couple of years. Those are things that, in red, if you will, are kind of hurting our expense side because we perceive them to be potentially more than 2% going forward. What helps us is that we have a plan to do some route consolidation across all of our routes. So I made that green because that helps to offset some of these perceived expenses over 2%. And as I pointed out before, you don't know what you don't know. So I appreciate this is a little bit challenging to read, but we will post this in our minutes. This represents the 3-year budget projection using the assumptions that I just reviewed. The purple section represents some of our anticipated costs that would be more than a 2% increase. And when you factor that against the revenue and expense lines shown at the top in the green and the yellow, and then offset that by some future adjustments that we think we can save some money and factor in our capital budget in Fund 12, we anticipate that in the current year scenario, with the staffing that we've looked to try to add, we would be at a deficit of about $702,000. Going forward the next couple of years, we would have $676,000 and $931,000 deficits. This is very fluid, if I use the word fluid, because it's really difficult to predict exactly what's going to happen going forward. But I think that it's an effort to do so. This highlights some of our concerns from the previous slide. Looking at the 16-17 school year, where does this deficit come from? This is the deficit that we had some conversation about next year that really would be driven by trying to bring new staff in to address new elective programs, trying to respond to enrollment increases. Folks move to town, they have needs, we need to meet their needs. Sometimes that's going to cause the need for additional staff. We talked about that in terms of full-time equivalents for another ABA teacher and occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech services for another ABA class. When we talked about this last week, there might have been some confusion because I think we used a reference of 6 full-time equivalents for aides. Our plan was to try to hire 4 hour aides, twice as many as full-time aides. In my mind of counting personnel bodies, 12 half-time people is the same as 6 full-time people. So I didn't mean to confuse anybody by that. Obviously the difference being full-time people are eligible for health benefits and 4 hour per day folks are not. So there is some cost savings there if you can achieve that. And of course we are making the assumption in this deficit that we are able to save some money by consolidating bus routes. So you look at that and say, well, how are you going to close your budget gap? You know, what is this thing about extraordinary aid? This question came up since the last presentation. We see that you're budgeting a certain level of extraordinary aid, but typically you get more aid when that figure comes in at the end of the school year. And I think that's what Mr. McLaughlin was trying to explain last week, is that the extraordinary aid that we budget for revenue, we try to keep to be a conservative estimate because we don't know if we're really going to get that money. We don't get that aid until after the school year is over. So we intentionally do budget less than what we might be able to achieve. However, over time, we have been able to manage to use that extraordinary aid. And we have seen that that aid has been more than our $1.7 million that we've been budgeting the last few years. The problem is that we can't count on spending all of that money now to solve immediate problems, because we don't know for sure that we're going to get it, number one. And number two, it does create a hole in future year budgets if you count on it and then you don't get it. Enrollment is going down. Doesn't that help you reduce your cost? Aren't some staffing needs up in the air? Yes, we've been talking about this, and this is why over the last couple of years, as we have looked at our staffing situation, what we've done is presented a balanced budget, and then where we think we might need staff, we've tried to fund that staff through these exact measures. Okay? And not to create panic, this is basically where we are today. We have submitted a draft budget to the state that is balanced. But we do have these perceived and anticipated staffing needs or requests. And we'll get into that conversation about the difference between need to have and would like to have. But for the sake of conversation, this is where we are now. We do believe that enrollment decline will help us out. And it may be that declining enrollment at the elementary level helps to fund positions that you might need because you have enrollment increases in other areas. That's what we've been doing, and we plan to try to do that again. What about busing costs? So this came up quite a bit in the fall. We talked about it quite a bit. What is our plan? Okay? So to update you on where we are, as I've mentioned a couple times, and as we've talked about earlier in the year, we want to take a look at all of our routes in the whole district, work with the Ed Services Commission, and see if we can't reduce some routes. Okay, now what's the practical impact? The practical impact is that route times would go up. That's just the fact. If you reduce some of the buses because they're not fully subscribed, and you try to get more kids on the bus routes that you keep, you've got to get around to pick up more students on a given bus. It's going to take a little longer. How much longer? I'm not sure. Would every single route increase in time? I'm not sure. But that's what we have to work on now if we're going to try to save some money with route consolidation. The other issue that we talked about, if you remember, was this issue of true cost and the cost that the Ed Services Commission has in providing us transportation versus what they're billing us. How can we be sure that we're not being overbilled to make sure that we get the services at a fair and reasonable price? Okay? So we are addressing that with the Ed Services Commission, and we have worked with them to come up with a plan to essentially audit expenses and procedures at the end of each year compared to what we've actually paid. That could go in our favor, it could go against us. We have to see how that plays out. Overall enrollment trends, okay? Remember what I said at the beginning. It always comes back to the kids. Where are the kids? What are the kids enrolling in, right? What services do we need to provide them? So as we look at the enrollment trends, we have seen over the last few years enrollment beginning to decline at the primary grade levels, kindergarten, first grade. When I look at the enrollment in the current grade 2 students in the district, when they get to Annan, that'll probably be the first entry of 6th grade class into Annan that's below 400 students. That'll be significant. I put a link at the bottom there, and you can click on this. It's on the webpage already. Under information on the Board of Education, it's got the demographics that the town demographer has been providing at no cost for the district for quite some time, and you can see these trends borne out if you want to take a look at more of the details. But basically, Annan should start to see a little bit of a decline starting next year. The current grades 6 through 12 all range between 450 and 480 students. So the next few years should really see Ridge be fairly stable. The question of the ASSA. What is this ASSA thing? Okay? It's the application for state school aid. Okay? It relies on student enrollment data at a certain snapshot in time. October 15th of each year is that snapshot in time. Why do they want us to submit our enrollment data in October? Because in February, they're going to give us the state aid figures for the following school year. And that state aid calculation is theoretically based on your enrollments. So they need those figures. They take them at October 15th. They work up their aid calculations. By the end of February, we get our aid figures, and and those 8 figures help us build our budget for the following school year. The interesting thing about that, of course, is it's a snapshot, and enrollment is very fluid. It changes all the time. We're going to see what that looks like in a little bit. So if we stick with the ASSA format for looking at students and looking at enrollment, meaning that students that are shared time between our district and maybe a district that they go to for part of the day or another school that they go to for part of the day, when the ASSA counts those students on roll, they count each of those students as 0.5. So we do have a handful of students that are shared, so we have to count some of them at 0.5. On October 15th, 2015, this fall, we had 5,630 resident students on roll. Students on our rolls that lived in town. 721.5 were special education students and another 83 were speech-only students. And I point out that when we talked last week and we showed that our initial budget submission had a decline in some of our special education costs, why are we talking about needing to spend more money on special education now in the form of a new ABA class and services for extraordinary costs? Well, because things change, and now that we're at April 1st, we're at 5,655 students on roll. We're up to 740 special education students, and another 112 are speech-only students. Well, sometimes these things change over time. So we have increased costs. I know that we have in district some children of staff members. And if they want any extra services, they have to pay for them. They're allowed to attend tuition free, but if they want any extra services, they have to pay for them. And some of these staff members have asked about speech services. And Gene and I have talked about it, and said, there's no way we can provide them. Even if you pay for them, we don't have the time. The staff are overbooked and overscheduled. Why? Because we went from 83 kids to 112 kids that need speech services. So things change over time. And we've had some students move into town. And our ratios have changed. The percentage of special needs students have changed. The number of students in the district has changed. I did a little bit of looking at this over the weekend because you have a lot of in and out movement to try to net out, to really understand what's going on. So yes, we went up by 25 students, but sure, didn't we have some students leave between October 15th and now? Sure, we had kids leave. We had kids leave, we had kids come in. And if you net out the students coming in and the students leaving, you get 25 net increase. And of that 25, 10 students were classified and had special education needs. So enrollment changes, the type of student changes, and we're about meeting the students' needs. Sometimes there's a cost to that. And that's why you see our concern about needing to spend some more money to provide for the students that are coming or have just come this school year. To that point, since September, some of the things that are driving the need to spend some more money, it goes where the students come from. We meet their needs. Okay? It's nobody's fault. It's just what happens. So that gives you a little bit of sense of what's going on with the ABA program. Special education is unique. We've talked about a little bit today and a little bit last week about staff requests. You just have less flexibility, right? We can make staff requests for elective teachers, like we've talked about, to try to help implement new programs or respond to the requests that kids have made, but we can't always meet that need. Just because it would be great to do doesn't mean we can actually do it. There's flexibility there. That's why they call it an elective. It's an elective. You don't have to have it. Okay? Sometimes you don't have so much elective choice. It's not so elective because kids need certain things as part of their base programs. And that's something that makes special education a little bit unique. Okay? You have an IEP that's a legal document that describes what the children need to have. You have to provide it. It's not elective. Okay? You may have to provide special busing or at-home services, OT, PT, speech, other extraordinary services. Okay? You have to have the right staff to work with them. You have to have child study teams. There's actually laws. You can look it up in 6A. How many kids are you allowed to have in certain classes, in a resource room class? How many kids are you allowed to have in an ICS setting? It is what it is. And sometimes you can't meet the needs of the students in the district. In this district, Jean and her folks, they do an amazing job having programs here to keep kids in the district. Really do. But sometimes you can't meet everybody's need. And there's a cost to sending kids out of district. The unfortunate part of that usually hits you in the pocket for the transportation. The educational cost, if you could educate them in district versus at a private school, might not be that different, but you got to pay to get the child there, and that can be $20,000 more. That can be very expensive. So you have to deal with that. We talked a lot last week about some concerns with respect to programs, new elective offerings in the form of STEM or STEAM, A being the arts, okay? There were some questions about cost and what would this cost. We did have a presentation in May of 15 with some preliminary costs. You know, roughly speaking, when we were looking at programs at Ridge, we had estimated around $75,000 and some need to send people for training. But that wasn't inclusive of hiring any new staff. We just said, we're not sure because we don't know what kids might sign up for. And it depends on how much you want to meet their elective need. Okay, so $74,900 plus some cost to train people in what they would need to do Project Lead the Way or an AP course. When we talked about William Annan last May, we estimated about $65,000 in equipment and licensing. And we didn't think we would need to hire anybody at Annan because we were only talking about maybe 1 or 2 elective classes in the 8th grade. So we didn't really factor in much for staffing there. So if you take $75,000 and $64,800 and you factor in a little bit for training, maybe you get to around $160,000. And that's not really any new staff at either location.